Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are heading into day 53 of the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and not a lot has changed since our discussions yesterday. So, first and foremost, we're still trying to obtain clarification on the casualties sustained by the Russian Navy from that strike on the Black Sea flagship of that Slava-class guided missile cruiser that sank in the Black Sea, in all probability due to a Ukrainian missile strike. But we'll continue to monitor the situation, and at some point we will have clarification, and I think the world will have clarification on what exactly happened and who survived and what have you. Furthermore, as is being reported, the Russians have issued a surrender order to the Ukrainian forces in Mariupol. They had until 6 a.m. this morning to surrender, and if any forces, those forces that did not surrender, the Russians would be raising the black flag, so to speak, and would not be taking prisoners going forward in the oncoming operations to completely remove Ukrainian forces from Mariupol. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But right now we're probably days, a week plus away from a possible Russian offensive towards Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. We think the Russians will be looking to, as we talked about before, to pocket those Ukrainian forces in this area. Now, with that being said, this is an incredibly important operation, and the winner or loser of this conflict in terms of this upcoming offensive may have great ramifications for the future of this conflict. Now, as I look at this, and I look at what the Russians are trying to do, and I'm looking at their strategic intent. I would say at this point it's what we've been discussing, really an operation designed to cut off Ukrainian forces in this what is becoming more of an eastern bulge or salient of areas that is controlled by the Ukrainian military, specifically Severodonetsk and areas near Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. I would think that this could be a two-stage operation. I would believe that the Russians would first look to possibly cut off Severodonetsk and isolate that. Obviously, you have a fairly significant terrain feature in the Donets River that is just to the southwest of Severodonetsk. But I think in order for this operation, for the Russians to be successful, they are going to have to either isolate and cut off Severodonetsk prior to launching this very large and wide-scale operation to eventually encircle Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. The concern for the Russians would be, do they have enough forces to conduct this operation? We understand that the Ukrainians are turning both Kramatorsk and Sloviansk into fortress cities. And at some point, once this operation is launched, and hypothetically they do not control Severodonetsk, what is going to happen is you're going to see an envelopment operation in which the Russian forces have enveloped Severodonetsk and pocketed those Ukrainian forces in Severodonetsk. And at the same time, they're going to be launching this secondary operation, which is probably more important than the seizure of Severodonetsk, but the level of difficulty in achieving victories near Sloviansk and Kramatorsk is going to be compounded and more difficult if the Russian forces have not isolated and or reduced and taken control of Severodonetsk. So if that has not occurred, the Russians could find themselves surrounding both Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. And remember, again, these areas are becoming these fortress cities, much like we observed in Mariupol. And Mariupol and these other three cities, Severodonetsk, Sloviansk, and Kramatorsk, are relatively close to the same side. Obviously, Mariupol has larger industrial areas, but nonetheless, when you put the two cities together as one defensive objective that the Ukrainians are attempting to hold, it becomes quite complex for the Russians. And if we fast forward as this operation starts and then continues, we could see these pockets where the Russians are having to expend a great many forces encircling these towns, Severodonetsk, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, or quite possibly both would be one defensive objective, meaning Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Is it possible that the Russians could split Sloviansk and Kramatorsk? Possibly. You have a river terrain feature in between the two cities, and it makes it a bit more difficult. But nonetheless, they could. And at the same time, when the Russians then encircle these three cities, they're also going to be facing Ukrainian forces to the west. So the Russians would have to have and deploy a great many forces to encircle these towns and cities, while at the same time continuing offensive operations towards whatever the next objective is, or fending off Ukrainian counterattacks in the west, while they deploy forces to prevent those Ukrainian counterattacks in the west, while they continue operations designed to eventually take control of these cities. And that is going to be a very, very difficult objective for the Russians as this operation starts. I am, quite frankly, of the mind that the Russians could possibly postpone this operation towards the latter part of May, early part of June. And the reason I say that is right now the terrain outside of operating along major highways and roads, the terrain continues to be very muddy. And due to the high water table, we continue to see Russian vehicles get stuck near these especially these areas where we have rivers, lakes, ponds, and what have you. So it makes it more difficult for the Russians to conduct large-scale maneuver operations, the likes of which they're really going to have to do in order to be successful. They're going to have to get away from operating on these main thoroughfares where the Ukrainians are and continue to conduct these anti-tank guided weapon ambushes that are costing the Russians dearly. And this whole concept of following these main roads towards military objectives, such as these large cities, is going to be very costly for the Russians. The Ukrainians continue to get a influx of large amounts of anti-tank guided weapon systems, everything from the Javelin to the In-Law to we're even now seeing older Milan type systems being deployed. So there is reportedly the U.S. Pentagon is reporting that there could be 10 anti-tank weapon systems for every one tank that the Russians have deployed in this operation. So it's going to be very, very important for the Russians to be able to maneuver. And if they can't maneuver and they operate along these main roads, such as the main road heading from Izium to the southeast towards Sloviansk. And if you look at the territory and the terrain, you have, especially along this main roadway towards Sloviansk, you have urban areas, you have very dense forests, and interdispersed in between these urban areas, these town villages, and dense forests, you have these fairly wide open fields of farmland. And many of these fields are not right now at least suitable for Russian wheeled vehicles to attempt to transverse. So the Russians are having to rely, obviously, on major roadways. And that has been a problem for the Russian military as this conflict has continued. So it would make more sense if the Russians are indeed continuing to have transportation and logistical problems because of the high water table. And the Russians have to know this. I mean, they fought a world war in much of Ukraine. And I would think prior to kicking off this operation, they would take that into consideration. Now, we could have a situation where obviously we have the May Day parade upcoming in Moscow, and that could be something that is driving this timetable for the Russians. And I would say for the Russians at least, that if this upcoming operation does not go well, meaning they are not able to achieve a fair amount of their military objectives located in the eastern Donbass area of operations, as I talked about earlier, they could be in trouble in terms of future-facing operations and successful operations, and obviously the possible political climate as well that is in Moscow. But this upcoming operation, incredibly important for the Russian military to have some sort of success in either enveloping or seizing control of these three towns: Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Severodonetsk. And that's going to be breaking some of these frontline Ukrainian units that have been very well dug in over the course of this conflict, and have proven very, very difficult for Russian forces to kind of root out and dislodge these Ukrainian forces. And then kind of compounding that, we're going to be seeing some more different Western weapon systems starting to be deployed on the battlefield. We're going to start seeing 155 millimeter artillery pieces, and we can now confirm that the United States is indeed going to send the Excalibur precision-guided munition. We're going to continue to see in-laws. We're going to continue to see javelins. We're going to continue to see these switchblade munitions, and more importantly, ammunition and supplies being funneled in to Ukraine via the United States, Poland, the United Kingdom, Romania, into this conflict. And the Ukrainian army continues to grow, continues to get larger. There continues to be a very robust mass mobilization of Ukrainian forces, and the Ukrainian military continues to grow and grow and grow. And at some point, we could see, and we may be starting to see that, where the Ukrainian ground forces is actually larger than the Russian forces that are on the ground in and around Ukraine. And quite frankly, I think we're already starting to see that because of the mobilization efforts, the full mobilization efforts that are underway in Ukraine. The Russians, as of yet, have not initiated that mass mobilization that is probably going to be required for a successful outcome in this operation. Now, they are mobilizing. They are doing more of a covert mobilization rather than a overt mobilization, but ultimately it's going to be all in or nothing for the Russians. I really believe the Russians are going to have to mass mobilize and put the entire national effort into this campaign if they want to see a successful outcome. I believe a successful outcome for the Russians, at least right now, is seizing all territory east of the Dnieper River. I think based on long-term Russian goals and need for strategic depth and security, I think right now the Dnieper River is very important, and controlling that territory east of the Dnieper River is going to be what would the Russians articulate as a successful outcome. They could quite possibly seize additional territory east of the Dnieper River, such as the areas near Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, but ultimately I don't believe that walking away from controlling that area is going to be long-term viable for the Russian Federation. I think in terms of taking and holding territory for an extended period of time and quite possibly integrating this territory into either the Russian Federation or a series of separate republics, it is going to be vitally important to control all territory, at least east of the Dnieper River. And I think ultimately the Kremlin's plan is to control the entire territory of Ukraine that is exposed to the Black Sea, and eventually have territory bordering up to Romania. Or I'm sorry, well, yes, it would be Romania and Moldova. But that is still a long way off achieving those objectives, achieving a consolidation of territory east of the Dnieper River is only going to occur if we have a successful Russian operation within the area of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, and they're able to pocket those and destroy those Ukrainian forces in this area. Again, Severodonetsk, Sloviansk, and Kramatorsk. But we anticipate that the Russians will again launch this operation within the next few days, possibly a week. It may be more advantageous for the Russians to wait until the terrain dries out a bit. But it looks like the Russians are going to go ahead and go prior to that occurring. And it may make sense, given the way the Ukrainian military continues to mobilize and prepare for continued war and continued operations. And this war could go on for some time, given kind of what we're seeing in the level of commitment by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the United States to fully supporting Ukraine in terms of this non-stop flow of munitions and supplies that are needed for the Ukrainians. But that's where we sit. We'll have more, obviously, later on. Thanks again for joining us.